What happens when you have something that would fit on this table and it will run your house? Pulling energy from the quantum vacuum or the zero-point energy field. You don't need utilities.
PG&E is due in federal court with the judge overseeing the utility's criminal conviction. It stems from the deadly explosion and fire in San Bruno caused by a PG&E gas line back in 2010. As part of its probation, the company was ordered to implement expensive safety measures like tree trimming and power shutoffs. But now PG&E wants to scale those measures back, saying that they could cost the company as much as $150 billion. This is all in the wake of PG&E's bankruptcy filing this week, citing potential liability from wildfires of more than $50 billion.
Hot, dry conditions turned vast forests into carpets of kindling. It fueled a trio of wildfires in California that killed at least 86 people last year and destroyed thousands of homes.
Huge flames coming up over the ridge. They were shooting up behind it, just coming up. I'm going, oh my God, we got to go through this stuff.
Randall Parkinson's among a group of survivors who are suing California's largest power distributor, PG&E.
The allegation is that PG&E's equipment failed, that its transmission line started this fire, resulting in a massive fire, a massive disaster, the destruction of property, the destruction of people's lives, and at this point, countless deaths.
More than $11 billion worth of claims have been filed so far. And AccuWeather says November's fires cost California's economy $400 billion. That's the equivalent of about 2% of U.S. GDP. President Donald Trump has blamed state authorities for the fires, saying better forest management would have prevented them. He's ordered a halt in federal emergency funds to California, a decision condemned.
Moment the Getty fire in Los Angeles started. Now take a look at this dash cam video and you're going to see a flash of light right there, just off the 405 in Brentwood. Investigators say that is the explosion that started everything early Monday morning. They say a tree branch had fallen on power lines during the high wind conditions. The sparks ignited the brush under the tree and the gusts of wind continued to fan that fire.
Overnight, that cloak of darkness expanding across Northern California with traffic lights out, cars crashing. In San Jose, officials declaring a state of emergency.
We took this step to ensure the safety of our customers and our communities as a last resort. This is not a decision that we take lightly.
With hundreds of thousands now without power, officials say the historic outage could last for days. Many waiting in long lines just to get gas.
PG in general should have taken care of this for the last 50 years. If they had taken care of this in the last 50 years, we wouldn't be having this now.
I think they jumped the gun, in my opinion. Turning it off is good, but wait till it's dangerous.
Even the governor voicing his frustration.
I'm outraged because it didn't need to happen. They're in bankruptcy because of their terrible management going back decades. They've created these conditions.
After PG&E was found responsible for dozens of wildfires, including the deadliest ever last year, the bankrupt utility company decided to proactively shut off the power to try to prevent the next fire. But that's impacted businesses across the region.
I cannot put the chair up or down.
Including this dentist office in Sausalito.
All of the computers are down, the phone is down, everything that we need to have a functioning office.
Some schools canceled. Others had their students working without electricity.
J.P. Morgan famously was reported to have said to Nikola Tesla, when he had a car that had a little antenna on it that was running around where the batteries were charging themselves. J.P. Morgan said, if we can't put a meter on it, we don't want it. Dr. Putoff, he does zero-point energy research. He's worked for every three-letter agency. Told me personally that he knew we already had these technologies, but that if he were to bring them forward, he would be killed along with his family and children. In 1927, there were 2 billion people in the world. Now there's 7. So of those 2 billion people, there were very few people living with cars and electricity in their homes and et cetera and so on. Now you have 7 billion people and billions more people living on that system, which has become entrenched, bureaucratically built into our funding mechanisms from the state, local, federal level of support, and also where there are a lot of very powerful stakeholders. And so from a rational point of view, you'd say, well, these technologies would get us off of oil, gas, nuclear power, no more Fukushimas. But from the point of view of people who are looking at the national security equation from a macroeconomic stability point of view, this is their worst nightmare. 99.9% of the people on planet Earth would benefit from this. There is a very, it's not the 1%, it's the 0.0000001% who would not benefit from this because they are the ones sitting atop the petrodollar system, the macroeconomic order, and particularly the fact that it is run, and everything we're using is run on a metered, linear energy source, even solar and wind. If you begin to talk about the phenomena of new energy, free energy, anti-gravity, UFOs, you're stepping into an area that is the most sensitive, compartmented intelligence in the history of the United States.
This is where you start. The way we make or break our business every day is right here. People on the ground, people turning wrenches, driving trucks.
Bill Johnson has a lot of ground to cover as he works to understand the utility he now leads. PG&E covers 70,000 square miles with 24,000 workers. But for now, his focus is pretty simple.
Mostly in this business, we do routine tasks repetitively. We put up wire, we dig trenches, we inspect things. That is where we need to focus. We need to focus on doing that right instead of focusing on did we get the right number done today or whatever that pressure is.
Safety is a priority because he's already seen the massive consequences of mistakes. He made it an early priority to visit San Bruno, where PG&E gas lines caused a deadly explosion in 2010, and Paradise, where a fire sparked by PG&E equipment last November killed 85 people and destroyed 19,000 structures.
Why was it important to you to actually go?
My own view is unless you go see something, you really don't understand it. And I really wanted to go see it. I wanted to talk to the people who are affected, people who'd lost houses, lost loved ones. I have to say, what a heart-wrenching experience. Just never seen anything like it. So I wanted to understand our part in this.
He has just retired as the CEO of the Tennessee Valley Authority, a large federal utility covering parts of 7 states. The question he hears the most is why he even wants the job. PG&E is in bankruptcy with nearly $70 billion in liabilities.
It's really pretty simple for me. Somebody had to come here and try to help. And it had to be somebody like me who really has no career risk. This is post-career. I've retired twice. I owe nobody anything. And so I can focus every day on doing the right thing the right way, customers we can.
Company officials have been called tone deaf and worse as a bankruptcy judge approved $235 million in additional pay for employees. That was not Johnson's decision, but he supports it, saying it helps PG&E hold on to experienced workers. And his salary has also come under fire. His base pay is $2.5 million a year, with a $3 million signing bonus and another $3.5 million per year in stock bonuses.
That does become dicey when you're looking at people who've lost homes or are worried that they're going to get pennies on the dollar. So how do you explain the numbers?
Well, I do think you want to have someone in charge at this time who has a little experience, a little judgment, has seen some things, who has a record of being able to fix things like safety. And so the compensation, I think, goes with that. And if you notice, 65% of my compensation is tied directly to the safe operation of the company.
Millions of Californians are preparing to live in the dark again as the wildfire threat intensifies. The state's largest power company is pulling the plug on hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses to combat fierce winds that have the potential to bring down trees and power lines and spark new fires.
We're potentially going to see a historical wind event, and it has us highly concerned that the vulnerable areas of California could see some explosive fires.
That's prompted PG&E to cut electricity for the third time in as many weeks, but this one's the largest, affecting millions of people in Northern California. 2 massive wildfires have already scorched thousands of acres at opposite ends of the state and forced tens of thousands of people from Los Angeles to wine country to evacuate their homes.
Scary, crazy. We've lived here 37 years and never had to evacuate.
I just threw stuff in the car, in the trunk of the car, and with my cat and my dog.
Tonight, most of Northern California on edge. The pending power shutdown, a desperate effort to protect communities from the threat of wildfires. The state's largest public utility, PG&E, warning of one of the most severe dry wind events in recent years.
There's nothing else left.
Thad Mazzoni's Coffee Park neighborhood burned to the ground in 2017. Only 10% of his neighbors have returned home since. PG&E says 50-mile-an-hour winds could force them to cut power to around 800,000 customers in more than half the state's counties. The utility can't afford to take any chances.
Eyes on the vegetation fire underneath the transmission line.
Last November, powerful nighttime winds whipped a fire through the streets of Paradise, killing 86 people and destroying 1,900 buildings. The worst fire in California history was blamed on faulty electric lines owned by PG&E, the company now facing billions of dollars in liability.
We understand how important electricity is, but we also want to make sure that our customers and the communities that we serve are safe.
Mazzoni says worrying about forest fires has become his new normal.
It's just something new that people are going to have to get used to.
A new reality.
A new reality.
Some people may not have anything to go back to. Take a look at this video. Fast-moving flames from the tick fire in Southern California, threatening to engulf a home.
Everyone evacuate, the smoke's coming up!
And then there's this video of a family loading their belongings into a vehicle as the fire looms and black smoke rises in the distance. To the north, firefighters are racing to get a handle on the Kincaid fire as the winds pick up. The U.S. National Weather Service says gusts this weekend could reach nearly 140 kilometers per hour. Last year, a wildfire sparked by a PG&E transmission line tore through the town of Paradise, killing dozens and destroying even more homes.
Engineers has resulted in us having an energy sector that requires us to burn something or heat something up to create steam to get us electricity or to run our cars. However, 100 years of really advanced physics, which weren't that well understood 100 years ago in terms of very high voltage systems at certain resonant high hertz, they call it, cycles per second, would result in this excess power. And it was observed by Faraday, and it was observed by Tesla, and it was observed by many others, and said, where is this coming from? That zero-point energy field, as it turns out, is embedded everywhere in space, not outer space, here in this room. So that every cubic centimeter of space in this room, for example, has enough power to run at least the United States for a day, a cubic centimeter. So it's an enormous field of energy. So running our planet on this energy field would be like taking a thimble out of the Great Lakes or something of water. It's a trivia, it's a rounding error. However, as J.P. Morgan famously was reported to have said to Nikola Tesla, when he had a car that had a little antenna on it that was running around where the batteries were charging themselves, J.P. Morgan said, if we can't put a meter on it, we don't want it. Big bankers. Now, 100 years ago or 90 years ago to today, nothing's really changed in terms of the geopolitical, financial, macroeconomic exigencies. Political, macroeconomic policy issue is the big problem. And it isn't just because there are a few bankers and kleptocrats that are misanthropic sociopaths, although some of them are. It's because there are a lot of stakeholders who don't want to have to deal with the change. Even if you don't accept that in your paradigm, the inhumanity of keeping these sciences and technologies away from the public and the poverty that it engenders. Because I was talking to an industrialist from India, and he was telling me it would take trillions of dollars to properly electrify the subcontinent so that people have the energy they need using today's conventional systems, even solar, even wind, even coal. And you know, we're facing a situation now that every year or two there's 1,000 new coal-fired burning power plants being put online in India, China, and elsewhere, mostly without any scrubbers. So in the Pacific Northwest and other places, you have a huge amount of the pollution that's in the West Coast is coming from Asia because there's no scrubbers in those coal. And you look at the air in Beijing and Shanghai and other cities, it's not breathable. Then you go to the oceans, where you have the Fukushima reactor releasing all this radioactive material, and huge parts of the oceans, because there's all the CO2 going into the oceans, are beginning to die because of the acidity and alkaline levels being upset. So there are all these big macro geophysical effects while we're trying to maintain the current macroeconomic order. Big problem, huge mistake. But who's going to fix it? This is really the crux of the problem. And many people have asked me, given the folks I've met with over the years, why doesn't someone do that? But see, everyone says that. My wife and I this week were just up in New York meeting with the head of a foundation. And the question came up frequently with people there, all of whom were incredibly wealthy. Well, why doesn't Bill Gates do it? Or why doesn't the president? It's always, why doesn't someone else? Of course, if you go to the president, he'll say, no way, Jose. And if you go to billionaire X and billionaire Y and billionaire Z, many of whom I've met with, they'll go, you know, one of them once said to me, we all want to be first to be second. Great expression. You hear it a lot in business. When it's a very controversial science, no one wants to be the first to stick their neck out. So this becomes then a leadership issue, which is what I've tried to provide some clarity to in my own humble way, being not a significantly wealthy or powerful person at all, but knowing what I know, try to share it with the public and try to create a momentum towards disclosure, not only of the fact that we're not alone in the universe, but that the secret behind these UFO propulsion systems and energy systems would give us an entirely new planet, beautiful. But there are stakeholders who are very, very powerful who aren't happy about that.
Would have prevented them. He's ordered a halt in federal emergency funds to California, a decision condemned by Democrats.
How shocking it is that this president would say he's going to withhold funding to meet the disaster assistance, disaster needs of people, unless you have a different definition of what a disaster is and the needs for assistance. You have no right to withhold those funds.